to meet Babu after such a long time, and his love and humility always brings forth a lot of joy to me.
First of all, I thank Shri Mataji for making this interview happen and seek our blessings for fruitful discussions. Sir, I came to Sahaja-yoga in Feb 1990. That time, the name Yogi Mahajana was so popular, I heard it before seeing you personally. You were very much inspiring such yogis during that time. The question is, what is the secret of blessings behind such close proximity to the divinity in form and in formless?
It was Srimatiji's grace that I was allowed to be in close proximity to her. And there's nothing special about me. It was her grace. And the only part I played was that I was totally surrendered to her. And my love was just flowing towards her all the time. And the only desire was how to please her. So there was no personal agenda. I was not looking for any popularity, as you mentioned, or any name or fame. I was not even aware of it. It was just being drenched in the ocean of her love.
Thank you, sir. Sir, how can the layman understand this creation of God, and what was the need for the God to create?
A layman can understand the creation of God through Sahaja-yoga, because first he has to know the self. Only then he can know the creation. The creation which he sees through his sense organs or the mind is limited, whereas the one who created it is unlimited. So you cannot know the unlimited through the limited mind. So you have to go beyond the mind. And how to go beyond the mind? When through Sahaja-yoga you get your self-realization, then your consciousness expands beyond the mind. And you experience the all-pervading power of divine love. And then you understand that this all-pervading power of divine love is the Adi Shakti. And this creation is done by the Adi Shakti.
Okay, so now the question is, how to achieve the self-realization easily and best people can achieve it and get established?
Self-realization is your own birthright. Everyone can get it. And because it is spontaneous, it is very easy. Because it is your own. It is not borrowed. Nobody is giving it to you. It is something that is inside of you. And it is just awakened, that's all. So it has been inside you from the very beginning. And only a sage yogi ignites it and you start having the experience on your central nervous system. So this experience has to translate in your central nervous system. And that job your Kundalini does. So it is not your imagination, it is not your mind, it is not your intellect, it is not your logic. It is an actualization that takes place on your central nervous system. And through that, you record it and experience it as your inner consciousness. So this is how you establish your self-realization. So first step is that Kundalini has to be ignited. So you feel a few strands of the Kundalini in your Sahasrara. Later, as you start practicing Sahaja Yoga, the Kundalini is established in your Sahasrara. So unless it is established, just getting the awakening of the Kundalini is not sufficient. You have to establish it by all the Sahaja Yoga methods, by regular meditation, by listening to what Shri Mataji has said, following her talks, observing them into day-to-day life.
So what is the best form of meditation in Sahaja Yoga?
The best form of meditation in Sahaja Yoga is to feel her joy inside of you. In the beginning, we spend a lot of time on the technical aspect of Sahaja Yoga, clearing the chakras, saying the mantras. So once all the chakras are clear, then you start feeling the movement of the Kundalini inside of you. And as she releases her vibrations and opens your Sahasrara more and more, you start experiencing the joy. So your meditation should be to feel the love for Shri Mataji more and more. She's inside of you, she's not outside of you. She's not in any one place. She is your own Kundalini. So when you feel the love for Shri Mataji, the pure desire of the Kundalini, its suction starts taking place inside of you. And when you feel that suction, you feel the joy of that suction in your Sahasrara. So you start enjoying the joy of Shri Mataji. So it's a very joyous feeling. And then as you love her, you love others also. Because love is unconditional. It is your state. You just become a very loving person. That's how it works.
Okay. So could you please describe us how you got introduced to this Sahaja Yoga and your first connection with the divinity?
Before Sahaja Yoga, I used to be giving lectures on the Gita. I was basically a student of Vedanta, which is ancient Indian philosophy, which states that God is one and God is everywhere. And I was always told that there is an energy inside of you. So although I knew the theory of it, I did not have the experience of that joy. So I was looking for somebody who could awaken my Kundalini.
You knew the name?
Yes,
name of the energy.
Because it is mentioned in our scriptures.
Okay, what Kundalini?
Yes. Kundalini has been described by the Navnaths, by Sant Ganeshwar in the 6th chapter of Ganeshwari. So Kundalini is not a new knowledge. It has been there since ancient times. But its knowledge got lost. And the Navnaths who used to give the knowledge of Kundalini used to only give it from one master to one disciple. And then it got lost. So when I saw a newspaper advertisement in Delhi in the year 1976, it was written Kundalini Awakening. In those days they did not call it self-realization. They used to advertise it as Kundalini Awakening. So I went to the program. It was in a temple in Old Delhi, and nobody was there.
Means you were alone? Or?
Yeah, the advertisement said that there would be a program of Kundalini Awakening by Her Holiness Shri Mataji Nirmala Devi. So I went at that time, mentioned, but nobody was there. So I thought maybe I have missed out something, and I waited for 1 hour. And as I was about to leave, suddenly an ambassador car I saw coming, say at a distance of about 10 meters. And the door opened and Shri Mataji came out of the door. And the moment I saw her, my kundali shot up.
Okay. Suddenly.
Suddenly. So I immediately knew that this is some divine personality.
Okay.
So there were no questions anymore because I had the
Yeah,
experience.
of course, yeah.
So after the program of realization, I told her my experience and she told me to come to her house.
Any more people were there?
There were about 25, 30
Okay,
people. It
okay.
was the very beginning of Sahaja-yoga at
Okay,
that time.
okay.
So I went to her house. She was staying with her daughter in Sahajra-yога in Delhi. And when I entered the drawing room, there were about 10 or 9 people sitting there, and she was working on different people. She was laughing, she was joking. And she told me, come here, sit down, and started working on my chakras for several hours. And then it was lunchtime, and she said, I prepared lunch for everyone. So I was very shy, how can I have lunch?
Yeah, she used to cook.
Yes, she used to cook. So no, you cannot go away from mother's house without lunch.
Yeah.
So I had no choice, and so we all had lunch, and she was telling us stories, and in between all that, this work of Sage Yoga, of correcting people's chakras, giving vibrations to this person, telling, oh, your this problem is there, or your that problem is there. Don't worry, I'll work on it. So this went on for a week, 10 days that she was in Delhi, and by then I started getting a sense of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I joined Sage.
Okay. So after that it continued.
Then of course her programs were there, she was going to London,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to America, so she said, why don't you meet me in London?
Okay.
She gave me her address, and she was staying in Brompton Square.
Um,
So then the meetings kept happening, and then I started joining her in different parts of the world.
okay.
And that's how Sage was.
Okay. This remembers me, the same thing happened with me also.
Yes.
When I heard about Sahaja-yoga, there I got one pamphlet, it
Yeah.
was written there, Come the Mother Calls,
Yes.
and Shri Mother's picture.
Yeah.
I was very anxious, I was not knowing what is the word Kundalini,
Yeah.
but I knew that the aim of life is to get self-realization.
Yeah.
So I went there, the 7 o'clock time was written
Yeah.
in that school, but nobody was there.
Yeah.
I was so excited to meet Shri Mataji and to get my self-realization.
Yeah.
I thought at last my dream is going to fulfill now.
Yeah.
But nobody was there.
No.
Yeah, after 10-15 minutes, Yogis started coming and the program happened.
That's how it used to be those days.
Yeah, those days, yeah. So any special moments which you like to share with us, your experience with Divine Mother Shri Mataji as A, she is the creator, the supreme goddesses. B, she is the redeemer. C, she is the caretaker as compassionate mother.
But there's so many moments, but I will tell you the one that stayed with me. As I explained to you that before coming to Sage Yoga, I was a student of Vedanta. So when you believe in one God, it's difficult to accept the idea of deities, and
Okay.
so I was always having a little reservation.
One God means informless?
Formless.
Informless, not informed.
Yes, not informed.
Okay.
So at the back of my mind, there was always a reservation. And in I think 1989, there was a program in near Kolhapur, a place called Angapur,
Uh-huh.
between Brahmpuri and. So there was a fanatic organization called Andhashraddha, which was against Shri Mataji, and their argument was that Sage Yoga is a cult and there is no such thing as Kundalini. So when Shri Mataji came on the stage at this Angapur public program, this group attacked her with stones.
Oh.
And I was standing next to her. So I tried to come in front of her to shield her from the stones.
Okay.
And every time I tried to come in front of her, she would push me back.
Okay.
So I didn't know what to do.
Okay.
And at the same time,
So the group was big, yeah?
yeah, the group was big.
Okay.
And we were about 8-10 stage yogis on the stage, the camera group, the music group, and all of them were getting attacked and they got hurt and they were bleeding.
Okay.
So I was totally in a state of panic and what to do. So I just prayed to her.
Okay.
That Shivaji, you tell me what I can do in this situation. And just at that moment I saw before her was a wall of vibrations.
Oh.
And the stones were hitting that wall and falling down.
Okay.
And no stone would hit her.
Okay.
While all the other yogis who were on the stage were getting hit
Uh-huh.
and were bleeding. 19 sage yogis were injured and they were taken to hospital, and there's medical report.
Okay.
But not one stone touched her.
Oh.
Although all the stones were, about 100 stones were thrown
Uh-huh.
at her.
Okay.
But there was this wall of vibrations, and all the deities were sitting on different chakras on this wall,
Oh.
protecting her.
Okay.
So at that time I realized that she is divine,
Okay.
and that nobody can hurt her,
Yeah.
and nothing can happen to her.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that was a turning point in my life.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because, of course, because of the vibrations, because of the experiences, we knew that she was
Uh-huh.
somebody divine.
Yeah.
But what that divinity is, that gave me the experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And many people must be there for the public program?
Yeah, yeah. All the
Okay.
villages.
They also got hurt? Or?
No, it was only directed
Ah,
towards
they directed
Shivaji.
toward the stages.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And at a very close distance.
Oh, okay. Very close distance. Okay.
So then the other yogis who had come, they wanted to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, no,
Mm-hmm.
nobody should take a revenge,
Mm-hmm.
and we should leave it to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
So the next year was New Year.
Next. Okay.
There
Okay.
was a New Year
Uh-huh.
puja in Satara.
Mm-hmm.
So we were all down and we were very sad and feeling bad that stones were thrown at Shimaji and we
Yeah.
could not do anything.
Yeah.
And she felt the left side movement of the collective.
Mm-hmm.
So in the night there was a bhajan program, and then she wanted to cheer us up, and she was telling jokes and stories because she wanted to uplift our spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So her concern was not that she was being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
Her concern was that her children
Mm-hmm.
were despondent.
Mm-hmm.
So her concern was always about her children.
Yeah.
That is the compassion.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
this compassion is what always manifested and was the motivating force of her life.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, another time we were going to Hyderabad for a public program, the first public program in Hyderabad. And we were going to take a train from the Pune railway station.
Mm-hmm.
And I had booked her in the first class air conditioned
Your
coach.
phone has no signal, so I can't help you with that at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
So when we were standing at the station and she saw the train come, she saw the third class compartment, a lot of people getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
And said, I want to go in this.
She said.
Yes. So I said, but you know, there are so many people and
Yeah.
you'll be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
No, I will give realization to all of them.
Oh.
So
How long journey was this?
it was overnight journey.
Overnight journey, okay.
So the whole night
Uh-huh.
she sat, and as people in the train came to know who she was,
Uh-huh.
there was a queue.
Okay.
And the whole night she was working on different people, giving that realization.
Oh.
And she was feeling very happy.
Oh.
The more she gave,
Uh-huh.
the more happy she was.
Uh-huh.
And it went on till about 4 in the morning.
Oh.
And I was worried that, her
Yeah.
public program is there in the evening and she
Yeah.
has no sleep.
Yeah.
So eventually I begged the people, please stop, she has to
Uh-huh.
have rest, but you can come to her public program.
Okay.
So since it was the first public program, we were apprehensive
Mm-hmm.
how many people will come. And the
First public program in Hyderabad.
Hyderabad.
Okay.
So the Hyderabad people said maybe 30, 40.
Okay.
But these people from the train,
Oh.
there were at least 200 people she gave realization in the night.
Uh-huh.
So they spread the word, they brought their friends, they brought their relatives. We had 2,000.
Oh. 2000.
So you see how
20, from 20 to 2000.
yeah, see how compassion works.
Yeah.
So this is how she redeems us,
Mm-hmm.
by her compassion.
Yeah.
That is the power of compassion.
Yeah. Thank you very much. All the living individuals has the desire to live peacefully, healthy, to enjoy the life, wherein she doesn't have to worry for their day-to-day requirements and not to worry of the people who are dependent on them, for which you are the great living example, sir. How all can achieve it and when in near future?
Shri Mataji is often quoted the example of Lord Krishna, what he told to Arjuna. So he said, Yoga Kshema Vahamyam. That Shri Krishna said, first you connect to me, then I take care of your welfare. Likewise, once we connect through our Kundalini to the mains, that is the collective consciousness, then the collective consciousness starts working for us. In a way, you think of something, it happens.
Uh-huh.
You want something, it comes to you.
Okay.
So, but you have to be connected first.
Yeah.
So the best way to do that is through meditation.
Yeah.
But meditation means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Somebody may go off to sleep in his meditation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody may be meditating on one chakra. Somebody may be meditating on another chakra. Somebody may be meditating on an abstract. But the meditation, the connection has to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
So the feeling of love has to be there in your sestra. Your sestra has to be filled with love for Shri Mataji.
For Shri Mataji.
And then her love starts pouring
Mm-hmm.
as grace.
Okay.
And that grace pours down on the Ida and Pingla channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that grace brings with it blessings.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how your shape takes place, your welfare takes place.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you get lost to the world.
Mm-hmm.
You are still in the world,
Mm-hmm.
you still have to do your job.
Mm-hmm.
You don't become fatalistic, resigning everything to fate.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to do action.
Mm-hmm.
But everything is in a state of akarma,
Mm-hmm.
where you say, I'm not doing it. You're not the doer.
Mm-hmm.
It is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you realize that everything is being done by the Param Chaitanya.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that ego that I am doing
Mm-hmm.
is gone.
Mm-hmm.
That is the state of Sthit Pragya.
Mm-hmm.
Sri Krishna talked about it.
Okay.
That you become part of the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So you become a cell in a body.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think you or I or me, we, you say we.
Mm-hmm.
We see we, the cells in your body. So that is collective consciousness. It's a state.
Yeah.
You grow into that state.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it works.
Okay, so getting established is the main thing.
You grow into that state.
Yeah.
It's a process of organic growth. Like you put a seed in the soil. Now it sprouts by itself. But you cannot dictate that it has to happen in a fixed time frame. The Kundalini has her own time frame. You cannot dictate that. For some, it may happen in a month, for some a year, for some 10 years.
Yeah, so getting established is very important.
Yes.
Then everything will be easy. Everything will be easy. So, so with the blessings of Shri Mataji, I am based in Russia and India. It's very interesting for me to know how Sahaja entered into Russia.
It's a funny story. I was in Delhi and I knew some people in the diplomatic mission of the Australian, of the Russian embassy.
Oh.
And the ambassador became a good friend of mine.
Okay.
And he had a problem with his leg. And his wife one day told me that she has been to every doctor and tried also in India, but nothing has worked.
Okay. And this was in year?
It was in the 80s, I think 86, 87.
Okay.
And I mentioned to him that, I do Sahaja yoga.
Okay.
Would he be willing to try? Because it's a communist country and they don't believe in God and they don't believe in spirituality. So her husband was a little reluctant. But the wife said, why not try? I mean, you tried everything, so why not try? So they invited me to their house and I took a photo of Shri Mataji. And I told him to do all the steps of Sahaja yoga.
Like giving self-realization?
Yes.
Keeping
Yes,
hand?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And he started feeling better.
Okay.
And I just asked him to now walk a little.
Okay.
And he felt a little better. So he said, can you come again?
Okay.
So I almost went about 7-8 times, and by then he was feeling so much better.
Okay.
And he had a friend in Kremlin who was a minister, whose name was Kotsalov. And he told him that what had happened, and his friend had the same problem.
Okay.
So he told the ambassador, can you ask your friend if he can come to Russia? I will invite him and he can tell us about this. So I said okay, and I went to Moscow as his guest and I gave him the same treatment, the same steps. And he also felt better.
Okay.
So he was very impressed, and but his own question was that whose photograph, who's this lady? He kept asking.
Okay. Okay.
So I said, she's my mother. But why should I put my hands to her?
Okay.
So I said, I'll put another photograph and you put your hands to that photograph and see the difference. So there was a photograph in a room and I just put that in front of him. I said, put your hands, do you feel anything? He said, nothing.
Okay.
So I said, okay, now you put your hands to the photo of my mother. Now you feel anything? He said, yeah, I get a lot of vibration.
Okay.
So I said, that's the difference.
That's the difference.
So he was convinced.
He was convinced, okay.
So he said, can you invite this, your mother to Russia? I want to introduce her to the Ministry of Health and the Kremlin.
Okay.
And Shri Mataji was in London. So I telephoned her from Moscow.
Okay.
If she can come over the weekend. And she said, agreed, she very graciously agreed to come.
Okay.
And then he called all the ministers and the Ministry of Health.
So this was all happening in Kremlin?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
it's all
okay.
happening.
And sorry, sir, is this the first visit of Srimati?
It was the first visit.
Before that, she was.
No.
Okay.
So when she came there,
Mm-hmm.
there was a very big meeting held in the Kremlin, and ministers were there, and she explained to them what Sahaja Yoga.
All such.
Yes.
It was like a public program?
No, it was just about 20 people around the table.
Uh-huh.
And the Minister of Health was very impressed,
Okay.
because there are many diseases which cannot be cured by medicine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Psychosomatic diseases,
Mhm.
epilepsy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So they asked Srimati if she could have a joint venture with the Ministry of Health
Mm-hmm.
to teach them the methods of curing these various diseases. And she agreed. So we signed, on behalf of the Life Eternal Trust, I signed a memorandum of agreement with the Ministry of Health and Life Eternal Trust for a joint venture in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the first official spiritual movement that was recognized by the Soviet government.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that gave us entry into the Soviet Union,
Okay.
sponsored by the Soviet Union.
Okay.
So the next time they invited Srimati, she addressed 500 doctors
Okay. Where what is in Moscow only?
in Moscow.
Okay.
And as she kept telling them about the medical aspects of Sahaja Yoga, they said, we know the medical aspects, you give us experience.
Okay.
So she gave them realization,
Okay.
and they immediately got realization.
Okay.
And then different doctors opened centers in different parts of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
In Moscow, there was a doctor, and I think you met her, Dr. There was a Dr. Valentina.
Yeah.
There was another one, Dr. Lena. She was sponsored, and that is how center started in Moscow.
Center started in Moscow. Okay.
And then from there, we started doing public programs next year onwards, 89 onwards.
Okay. Okay.
So huge public programs that you've seen,
Yeah.
20,000 people, football
Yeah.
stadiums.
Yeah.
That is how Sahaja Yoga spread.
Okay. Okay.
And Shivaji appointed Dr. Valentina
Okay. That time.
in charge of
Okay.
spreading Sahaja Yoga. And
Okay.
she did a wonderful job.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Great. Nice to know. Yeah. So I remember during 1990s there was a great joy among Sahaja Yogis that Sahaja Yoga is taken by a great number of people in Russia and it's getting established. So could you please share your memories of that early golden era of Sahaja Yoga in Russia?
It was a great moment to see the Russian heart open after a century of communism,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and where their heart had shriveled in fear and in domination.
Mm-hmm.
It was a country where for 100 years you could not even take the name of God.
Mm-hmm. 400 years.
Yeah. So, the Russians were beaming with joy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that joy was so fulfilling. So Shivaji described that the Russians got it so fast
Mm-hmm.
because they had pure consciousness, they had pure intelligence, because they were saved from false gurus and the conditionings, like Europe was very much conditioned by the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And all those ideas of Freud, things like that, where the Russians were very open-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
So because of their pure intelligence, the Kundalini could just open their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Diwali Puja in the winter
Diwali Puja
in Moscow.
In Moscow.
Yeah.
Which year? It's
Around 89, 90.
okay.
And the Russians, it was snowing.
Uh-huh.
And the Russians were so touched that, Shivaji not only came to Russia in the good weather, but she even came to her children in this very cold and hostile weather. That she really loves them so much. So it just opened their heart completely. That was the opening. So there was no other thought of power or any ego, because there was nothing. It was just love. It was much later that centers got established and organizations stepped in, and then people saw a chance to get power in their hands. That's when things went different.
Yeah, and also I heard that during the time of this shifting, what they call as perestroika, means from communism to democracy, there was a big problems, and Shri Mataji was present that time.
Yes.
Any memories of that time?
Yes. So at that time, Gorbachev was wanting to meet her.
Okay, he wanted to meet.
Yeah. She wanted to tell him that, what you're doing is okay, but you have to go about in a very Sahaja manner, at a pace that the people can absorb. And if you immediately open your doors to the Western economy, they will sweep it, and your cottage industries, your handicrafts, everything will disappear, and all these machine-made goods from the West will flood the market. So she was very worried about the situation on the economy side, but on the other side it was good that freedom was coming, because when there is freedom of the spirit, then it can go deeper. That was the situation.
Okay. Yes. I remember Shri Mataji had directly involved you, sir, with the work of Sahaja Yoga in Russia. We will be very happy to hear about your experience with such great involvement.
I travel to Russia at least every year, 3-4 times.
Every year?
Every year.
Oh.
Because the problem was that the numbers were growing, but we didn't have any meeting places. Like in other countries, you had a center.
Yeah.
Now in Russia, that concept didn't exist, because everything was state-owned.
Okay.
Everything was government-owned.
Yeah.
So you couldn't own a center. So you could hire halls when they were available, but it was never that you would get the same hall. So how would people know where to come on a regular basis?
Yeah.
And unless people knew where to come on a regular basis, you can't have a collective. Each time you change a place, or one corner of the city to the other corner of the city, so how do you communicate with the people?
Yeah.
And there was not even the internet.
That time.
So people, how would you connect with them, or tell them? So that was a major problem. And because of that, we lost a lot of people. Like if you had 10,000-15,000 people come to a public program in a stadium, then after she left, we didn't have the space or an avenue to say, okay, now come here every Friday, or come here every Saturday, or come here every Sunday. That was the problem. So we lost out a lot of people.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. So I'm sure you and Shri Mataji had discussed many times Russia
Yeah.
and Russians.
Yeah.
We'll be very glad to hear some of such talks directly from you.
So as you know, that Shimaji said that Russia is the front Agya.
Friend and
Agya. So how do you address the ego? How do you deal with the ego? So the first thing about the ego is that it's very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tell somebody that you have an ego problem, he will bounce back and say, you have an ego.
Yes.
So there was this constant friction amongst the Russian collective, that they were very argumentative, very aggressive, and also they analyzed everything because their mind is very scientific.
Scientific.
So everything but Sahaja Yoga had to be analyzed. And the good thing was, because they were feeling the vibrations, they were being guided by the vibrations. So the vibratory awareness started developing in a very strong way. So they could tell what is good for the vibrations, what is not good for the vibrations. So even if they did not know much about the spiritual concepts of Sahaja Yoga, the deities and all that, but they followed the vibratory awareness because they had the scientific mind. But that was the positive side of it. The negative side was that they were very argumentative, and they would very quickly start arguments.
Mm-hmm.
So Shimaji said the antidote to that is that you should be very humble.
Okay.
So when you address the ego, you should always humble down and show that you're nothing special, they are greater than you. You should always say to them that you are so advanced than us, you know more than us. So in this way, then their ego comes down. But if you say to somebody, I know more than you, then the ego jumps up. So you have to follow that. Always be humble.
Okay.
When you address the ego, always be humble.
Okay. It's a good lesson for me.
Yes. You will achieve much more
Uh-huh.
through humility.
Okay.
And humility doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're submissive.
Mm-hmm.
Humility doesn't mean you're submissive.
Yeah,
That's the point.
yeah. So this is what Shri Mataji.
Yes.
So any memories of Shri Mataji describing the importance of Russia
Yes.
and Russian in Sahaja Yoga and their role in spiritual development of the world?
Yes. So when this Russian, under Gorbachev, this perestroika movement was going on,
Mm-hmm.
she saw that eventually Russia will get broken up, the Soviet Union will get broken up into different parts. So she said that it's very important that we save as many people, give them by realization, so that when these countries break, they will be able to give vibrations to these newborn nations and help them to survive. Because everything was at that time under the blanket of Soviet Union. So a lot of these countries didn't have a backbone. They were dependent on the Soviet Union. So when these countries separated, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, They didn't have a sound economy. So she wanted to give them the blessing through sage yogis who were there. So they would guide them, they would bring the Mahalakshmi Tattva inside of them. That's why a lot of Mahalakshmi pujas were held in Russia. She wanted to bless the Mahalakshmi Tattva of all the yogis. So when these new countries are born, they will have a strong Lakshmi Tattva to survive. That is why it was very important. Russia was that time the most important country in her agenda. And then with the Eastern Bloc movement, it infiltrates China. China is the largest country in the world. So the role of Russia was very it was like a door. The Agya was the door to the back Agya, to the Sastra.
Very important.
It was very important. And the second thing was that Russia was not corrupted by money. The
That
people
time.
were not.
At that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
People were very collective. The message of Lenin was actually collectivity, but it was implemented in a harsh way. So what has happened to the other part of the world, we have seen the results, that with all the blessings, the Americans were lost in consumerism. So she didn't want that to happen again and spoil the Kundalini, the chakras of the Eastern Bloc. So if they held on to their value system of Sahaja Yoga, they won't get corrupted. And that is very true, that even after the breakaway, the yogis in all the Eastern Bloc countries, they are saved. They have not got lost into consumerism. Their Kundalini has saved them. Their value system, the Dharma, has sustained them. So that was the point.
I heard in the early times from some yogis that Shri Mataji had said Russia will rule the whole world in spiritual sphere and India will be Russian guru. Your views on this, please?
Well, India has been the source of inspiration. We say the guru, it means it is the source of inspiration. Because as you know, the Kundalini is here, the Sestra, Himalayas, so all the Swayambhus here. So it is the source of vibrations to the rest of the world. Now, Russia, being the Agya, is the master gland. And whatever Russia does and says affects the whole world. So it has a major role to play in the geopolitics of the world. And if it is governed by the chastity principle that comes from India, the Shri Ganesha principle of purity, of chastity, then it will uphold that principle for the rest of the world. So now, for instance, in the West, they have legalized gay marriages. Okay?
And so, Russia has opposed it.
And Russia has opposed it. Now, it doesn't stop at that.
Mhm.
Now in the West, a gay couple can adopt children.
Yeah.
So if a gay couple adopts a child, the child will think that this is a normal way of living.
Yeah.
So a whole social order will come up in a confused way,
Yeah.
not knowing what is right and wrong. And they will think that this gay is the natural way of living.
Mhm.
So this whole society will get destroyed.
Yes.
So the West is destroying itself.
Yeah.
Nobody from outside has to destroy. They think that this is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
You'll be surprised that now in schools they say that the children should decide for themselves whether they are a he or a she.
Yeah, very surprising.
They are erasing complete gender. They are trying to completely erase Shri Ganesha from their vocabulary. Whereas Russia
Mhm.
is opposing all this.
Yeah.
Because they have pure intelligence to understand
Mhm.
that the social foundation of the society is supported by the chastity, the innocence of Shri Ganesha. So this innocence principle of Shri Ganesha rises, as you know, at the Agya Chakra and becomes the Mahavishnu,
Mhm.
becomes Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It is the same innocence that again crosses the Agya Chakra and comes to the Sesra and gives you the joy. If you don't have innocence, you cannot have joy.
Mhm.
In Sahaja Yoga, you ask the question about meditation.
Mhm.
So if you don't have innocence, how will you feel the joy?
Mhm.
And if you don't feel the joy, you will not enjoy meditation.
Yeah.
So you will change, you will switch, you will try something else.
Okay.
So the essence of our spiritual growth is innocence, is Shri Ganesha. So Russia and Australia have played a major role in the recognition of this principle.
Mhm.
And through Russia, by upholding this principle, it will spread.
Mhm. So the prevailing situation of groupism in Sahaja Yoga in Russia is the part of the divine plans or shortcomings of the yogis?
No, it can never be the part of a divine plan because the divine loves everyone and is very collective, it's collective consciousness.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it is the ego that divides.
Ego that divides, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So because Russia is the ego,
Mhm.
so the division takes place.
Mhm. Mhm.
But the ego has to now be sublimated
Mhm.
by the innocence, by the humility of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
See, Jesus Christ was so humble that he was born in a manger.
Yeah.
And yet, he sacrificed for others.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is the quality.
So what is the greatest blessings for human being on the earth?
The greatest blessing for human being on the earth is to be connected to the divine, to know thyself, and to feel the joy of the all-pervading power of divine love.
Yeah. Oh, very right answer, very short and right. Yeah. Yeah, I also feel the same. So at last, your message for the Russian yogis, please.
My message is I love you very much. They are very great people, very dynamic people. They have huge potential.
Okay.
They are very disciplined. They are very collective, very sharing. I still remember that we were in Moscow and the Russian yogis wanted to come to India for the India tour.
Okay.
And 3-4 of them did not have enough money.
Okay.
And the others were chipping, they were going around collecting money
Okay.
to pay for this one.
Okay.
And this was something that I had never seen before,
Mm.
that how they share everything.
Yeah.
Even the little they have, they share.
Yeah.
During the time of the Soviet Union, they used to come for the pujas, and somebody, they had to arrange for our breakfast, so somebody could only find bread, so he brought bread. Somebody could only find eggs, so he brought eggs. Somebody could only find butter,
Okay.
so he brought butter. But when everyone brings something, what they have, their gift, it makes a feast. So in the same way, for the Russian yogis, they should realize maybe one person is blind, maybe one person is deaf, maybe one person is mute, but if the mute, the deaf and the dumb and the blind, they join together and give each other their gift, then as a team they can work.
Yeah.
But if they isolate into groups, they only diminish their own power. Today, the power of Shri Mataji is working as the power of Shri Kalki. And the power of Kalki is nothing but our collective power.
Okay.
When our kundalinis merge together, they become so powerful, we become such a powerful force that we can change the whole world. Nothing can stop us. It is such a great power. For instance, if you have one stick of wood, you can break it. But if you have a bundle of wood, you cannot break it. So when you move with the power of Kalki, nobody can destroy, nobody can attack. You can change the society, you can change a country, and you can change the world. You can save the innocence of the world. You can be the Ganas of Shri Ganesha. So stay together. Forget your differences. They are only coming from the ego, nothing else. If you love your mother, she wants her family to be together. Nothing gives her greater joy than to see her family united. And nothing breaks her heart more than when her children fight and divide. So, what Srimaji has told us is, yes, I know you love me very much, but unless you love others, I cannot feel your love. So, you know everything about vibrations, you know the theory of Sahaja-yoga, you have all the knowledge, but if you become digital, then what's the use? Sahaja-yoga is a living process, and it lives with the nourishment of love, not by the division of the ego. Thank you very much. Jai Shri Mataji.
So no words can describe the greatness I feel to interview the living legend in Sahaja-yoga. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity.
Das Vidanya.
That's sweet. Sure.